28th of June 2023, you're very welcome back, and we continue our series on the public service in Ireland, and in particular as they're getting it hard to get recruits, and countries like Canada and Australia are looking to get young Irish people over there and get them out of here, and our government wants to replace the existing population with migrants and all of that. We look at the culture, and this culture didn't arrive recently, it is there for decades and decades. So we're talking here now about the Irish public service and the Gardaí, the army, the health services and the media. All of these are all under the public service. The media may not be directly under it, but RTE, for example, which is now in a mess, is directly under it, and so are many others. And there is a huge connection between the media and broadcast media and the government and all of that. You know that yourself. Now, so how we're looking at here is the culture, the subculture, and the iron fist. In the Irish public service, unlike in many companies, the management make the decisions, but they allow their staff a certain amount of leeway to do things that don't, as long as they don't damage the company in a permanent way. And that's a fact of all employment. And in the Irish public service, it is largely the same. But in private businesses, right, the owner of the business may not sack himself, but if it's a public limited company, there will be accountability for directors to a certain amount. They have to perform in a certain way, and they have to comply with the rules and the law on management of staff and all of that. And yet in the public service we see people in the courts regularly trying to claim their rights where their rights are taken away by management, even though it's been the law for years. And this is the state that created this law. So now we're looking at the culture, the subculture, and the iron fist, and I can only deal with a bit of it. Now, one of the things about the public service is a fixed retirement age, So in most branches of the public service, there's a time when you have to go. I think the army may be 41, if I'm not mistaken. I'm not sure about that. Someone can comment underneath. It's higher for commissioned officers. The Gardaí is 60. It used to be 57. It's 60 now. And they have to go. All ranks except the commissioner himself have to go. The commissioner can serve up to 65, depending on certain circumstances and at the pleasure of the government. But all the other ranks have to go at 60. They have to go. They get a letter. Your services are no longer required. It's the same with consultants in hospitals to a degree. And it's the same with judges, by and large, and nurses, teachers. In all branches of the public service, there's a cut-off date. Now, you might say, wouldn't it be great to get the word and get out and get a bit of a pension and go on and do something else? Would you believe that those who have the privilege, particularly, don't look at it like that? But it's a mixed bag. But there is easily half of them would stay till they be 173. 173. So one of the things behind this is the status. They think they have status. Oh, I'm an army officer. Oh, I have status. Oh, I'm a Garda superintendent. Oh, I'm the superintendent in the local area, and I get my picture in the local newspaper. And the media plays a bit of a role in this. So it may be a bit the same in the Catholic Church. In actual fact, I'd say it is a bit the same in the Catholic Church, it has to be said. So they have this idea of status. They have this idea too that they're good for nothing, only what they were doing. They weren't much good when they were in there, but they were covered. And now when they leave, they become really just ordinary citizens, and they don't like that. And there was a chief superintendent in Mullingar one time, and when his time came, he offered to work for 2 years free. He said, I'll do the job for 2 more years if I can stay on for 2 more years. Now that would require a special act through the Dáil, and that was done during the COVID. They did give a slight extension for guards to keep them on for a while, but it needed a law through the Dáil. So the idea of an individual officer keeping his job, or an individual medical professional, or army officer, or custom officer, or anybody else staying on is out. That's out. They can't do it, but they try it, and they go mad coming up to it, some of them. And some of them go under a thing I have termed the lawnmower syndrome. Did you ever push a lawnmower along and suddenly you forget about petrol in it, and all of a sudden, or gasoline, it runs out of petrol. But before it runs out of petrol, it gets a big whiz, because the air in the tank becomes petrol or fuel enriched. You get a perfect rich mix of air and and petrol, and those fumes, just the last little bit of fuel in the tank, mixes with the air, and instead of it going through the jets in the normal way and through the carburetor, it actually sucks perfectly into the engine, and you get this big rev up, and you think, oh, it's going great, and next thing it just dies. And has often been noted in many branches of the public service. People who never worked much in all their lives, when they're approaching retirement, they get a buzz, and they're mad for work. They can't get half enough. Of course, there's also the idea that if they get involved in stuff before they retire, they may have to come back to deal with court cases or something else after it. I don't know if that's the case. It wouldn't be the case in the teaching profession, but it would be the case in the Gardaí to some degree. Now, the thing is, another thing they do, these people, when they get promoted, they have this status thing. They get involved in posh charities. There's posh charities. Now, the St. Vincent de Paul is not a posh charity, but there's the other ones, there's the Lions Club and some of these, and they're a sort of posh charities. And they might object to that, but they are a kind of posh charities. And they get involved deeply in religion and all this sort of stuff. But the thing is, they have an inflated opinion of their own importance. They have an inflated opinion of your own importance, and it's well known, once you're gone a week or two, nobody even remembers who you were, let alone the public. I have no idea who the guards are in my district. I haven't a clue. I don't read the paper, of course. Maybe that's the problem. Now, the thing is, what happens is they recommend people for promotion, and they have a say in who gets promoted. The thing was so bad that they tried to fix this, but it's still not fixed. And of course, the sons and daughters of existing senior officers get a clap on the back. All they have to do is mind themselves and be careful, and they're guaranteed promotion. And that's very unfair. And that's in the medical, and that's in everything. They get in there. Now, in RTE, 40 years ago, I knew a person working in RTE, and I was convinced of this is true. If somebody was so incapable, so ignorant and so stupid, down on the floor, down as a basic worker, they promoted them to get rid of them. They couldn't sack them, so they promoted them and put them up in an office. That was the case in RTE 40 years ago. That's how they handled people with no brains, ignoramuses. Give them a job pushing paper or doing something, and it was always involved in promotion, so they wouldn't kick about it. So they might want to be maybe presenters at some stage. That was never going to be the case. So they would say, right, well, we're going to give you a job up there in the office, counting up the change or counting up the allowances or something like that, and you're going to go to a higher grade, and they'd usually take it. But sometimes they'd be in positions where they could actually make decisions for the people on the ground. So you got people who were incompetent when they were doing the job, now making the decisions when they're promoted. This is a big thing in the military. It's big in the army. A lot of people who don't have a clue, they just rely on the basic training, they have no experience. It's huge in the guards. They're paper pushers out of headquarters. The officers up there see them and all that, and they get promoted, and they keep vacancies down the country for them in Sligo and Mayo and Cavan and all of that, and then they let them down, and they let them loose on the public and let them loose on the unfortunate local operatives who have been doing a good job for years, and the first words out of their mouth will be, things haven't been done well here now, we're going to change everything, and they'll try to show how they whip this whole place into line. Now, so they'll recommend them for promotion, and in many cases this will be on who they see. Who they see and who makes the tea. Who they see and who makes the tea. So, for example, if you're in Mullingar and you're in the divisional headquarters, you're seen going around, you might be a superintendent's clerk, you're making the tea, you could end up an inspector or a superintendent. And if you're down on the ground and you're dealing with vicious sexual assaults, vicious big assaults, keeping law and order, keeping things going, and you're a good administrator and everything, they don't want to know you. In most cases, that is the case. And of course, if you have an uncle or something, or some relation, or your mother is an election agent for some well-known politician, well, you're away in a hack. And some of these people get to be superintendents, and some of them are so bad that the local guards have to get them away on holidays to raid institutions for drugs. They'll interfere in everything, they'll destroy everything, they're ignoramuses. They're more worried about their dogs and their cats and out baloney like that than they are about crime. A guard could go in to get a warrant endorsed to search something for your stolen goods, your stolen telly or something, and they're on the phone and the guard can't get them off it, and they're talking to some other super down in Clare about baloney, and he can't get it done, and you can't involve them, and they're always on the phone. They're on the phone night, noon and morning, in the army, in the guards, up in the offices of the hospitals, and in the customs, everywhere. They're all on the phone. They're yapping up in Garda headquarters. They're yapping in the military barracks. They're yapping in the Department of Health, in the hospitals, while the staff are running around and you're getting attention. They're above in the offices yapping, drinking coffee, and seeing what other development they can get up to. In the middle of them, one or two decent people might get through, one or two competent people might get through, and there's always the exception. So that's the situation with them. Now, there's no measurement for performance really. I mentioned about the guards, how the performance develop and review. It's a stupid system and it fell through. The performance in the Gardaí is the more traffic offences are in the guard's book, the better he is. If he has 700 people prosecuted before the court, so that the whole court is jammed up, he's a great fella. But you see, it's easy stop a car, it's easy make a note of the lad and see he has no driving licence, no tax, no whatever, all the tire, no insurance. That's all very fine. But the thing is, you just issue your summons and that's it. There's no more about it. Could be a fine on the spot. But if you catch a fella for breaking into a house, when you take him in, he could be a child of 15. You have to deal with his mother, his father, and his granny. And they have to have access. You have to handle all that. You have to have him questioned. You have to get a statement taken. You have to get a peace commissioner in to witness him when he's having the statement. You have to get that peace commissioner. He wants a solicitor. You have to wait for a solicitor to come. You then charge him. When you charge him, then you let him out on bail. Then he refuses to come into the court. You have to go out and arrest him at his house. And there'll be raw and roolia-boolia at the house and a bloody riot out there in some of the rougher areas. And you have to get them in again, and then you have the same racket all over again. So for each detection that's made for breaking into your house, there could be 50 hours of work. For each detection made for a road traffic offence, there could be 10 minutes of work. And so the hierarchy get promoted because they fill the book. They never do the crime, and when they see a guard performing his duties in relation to the crime, they don't recognise it, they don't see it, they don't understand it, and they don't want anyone annoying them with crime or anything else. Whereas when they see the fella with the book filled, they give him the nod on the back. And sometimes this can be ordinary decent people and all that, and they can overdo it. And this was a big issue with Maurice McCabe, because there was the Maurice McCabe thing, the Gatso van and the detections were made by a machine on the road with a man just sitting in with a camera, and there was no differentiation between who was who, and that was good. But the minute that came in, the first thing the guards did was start nobbling or squaring or stopping the issue of the summonses, because the guards was in control. Now, Maurice McCabe wasn't saying every one of them had to go through, but he was saying there was 10,000 in some places, and therefore that was over the top, and he wanted some regard for the law enforcement end of it, for the road safety and all of that, and they didn't want to be told what to do. They could have fixed that by having a good solid system in place. It ended up that they lost the whole thing, and there's an office down in Templemore and Tipperary which deals with this, and the local officers have no say in it at all. Even if they get prosecuted themselves, there's no hanky-panky for now, but give it a wee bit of time. So that's the situation. They don't count for the solved crimes or not. And the other thing then is that these people, when they're approaching retirement age, they want to leave a mess. So while they're young, they'll try and promote people who they think is good. They may get it right or may get it wrong, but at least their motives will be reasonably good. But once they're approaching retirement, 4 or 5 years away, they will try and leave all the queer fellas, all the funny guys, all the head cases, all the screwed up members and doctors and nurses, and the queerest of people, to use that term in relation to how it should be used, not in the sexual term. Queer means strange, weird, and funny attitudes. And you'll get fellas and you'll get women, and they're silly, silly people. And you'll get people who are totally afraid and totally incompetent and not up to the job. And when they go up for promotion on specific jobs, when the superintendent is young, they'll not get through, they'll be held back. But when the superintendent, or when the head office in the hospital, or when the head officer in the military, or the head office in the customs, or the head office in the civil service, and I apologise if I left out the civil service. Look, I can't think of all of them. But when the head officer, or the head person, or the head civil servant, or whatever it is approaching retirement, In some of them, there'll be a few will do the best they can. They'll be honest and straight, but a lot of them will say, "Do you know what I'll do? I'll put John Henry McCracken. I'll put him in there. I'll leave the next fella to deal with this idiot." And this fella could be the detective sergeant, the detective inspector, and he's a head case. He could be the doctor in charge of some type of neurosurgery, and it's only a matter of time till he gets everyone into trouble. He let somebody die on the operating table, and there's no accountability for who recommended him. And you'll note now that within RTE and all the stuff that's going on with the corruption there and other corruption cases, they never look to see who appointed that person. They get away scot-free. They can decide, we're going to give that fella a go. And it's human nature. I'm not saying I would do it, but it is human nature. If I'm a chief superintendent and I have to get out of the job in 2 weeks, if I'm a senior consultant in a hospital, if I'm a civil servant up in Dublin in the Department of Housing or Department of Energy, and I'm up there and they're putting me out and I have to go home and not come back again and sit at home with the wife, and there'll be hell to play when he's under her feet and they won't get on so well. And when all of this is happening, and some of them taken to the drink and the devil knows what, when all of this is happening, how can I affect the times coming after me? And in their early days, that's by doing the best they can, which may not be much, but in their later days, that's by being vicious and by putting in the greatest Omadons into all these jobs, the greatest Omadons, and let them in there, and then maybe only 42, and they'll be there for 18 years doing all kinds of madness and all kinds of mad things. Not much can be done about them. How do you prove their head cases? How do you prove they're incompetent? There's no proper way of proving that. And there's no safety system in that. Now, where this comes in is that a young person joining the civil service, joining any of these branches of the public service, or indeed RTE, is faced with that straight away. When you go into your office, the fella that's over you could be one of these guys. He could have been specially selected because he's a walking, thundering idiot. And he could be vindictive. He could be the type that will hold a grudge. He'll want you to take work without any pay. He'll want you to work without any overtime. And that's very common in an awful lot of branches of the public service. The guy's up there, he's a bloody idiot. He has a bit of a plan. The problem is nobody will give him the money to do it. So he's going to ask the people under his command, the ordinary people, the ordinary private, the ordinary sergeant. Well, they don't have overtime, I suppose it's a bad example. The ordinary nurse, the ordinary doctor, the ordinary civil service, and the ordinary guard, do it tomorrow and come in for nothing. And then you're going to say, I won't work for nothing. You get onto the union, and then you're a marked person, and they hate the sight of you. Yet when it comes for promotion, they'll not give it to you. When it comes to anything that should be going, you won't get fair play. And that's how the thing is screwed up so much, and that is how it is screwed up from the top down. You have a way of avoiding all this, and that's don't have anything to do with them. Keep away from them. And when the church was at its worst, when it was really doing the dividend, I'm not against the church, but there was a time they were over the top. Many people said, I'm walking away, I'm having no more to do with them. Many people said that and did that. And that's what happens when you get this kind of ridiculous carry on. That's what happens. People have to shun it. And that's bad for a society. It's not good for a society that the ordinary John down the road, whose father runs the shop, can't join the guards, or can't join the army, or can't join the civil service, or the ordinary lady, or the ordinary Mary, or Jane, or Paddy, or anything else. The recent news out from RTE, and I'll deal with that separately, is that many of the women in it felt they weren't getting fair play. But again, there was a culture in RTE that you had to toe the line on the woke stuff. You couldn't give the other point of view. So have I dealt with that? These are decisions individuals have to make. You do get security in these jobs. You do get a pension. You do get a bit of a gratuity. What do you do? What do you do? I don't see anyone who didn't join these jobs any the worse off when they were 65, and some of them worked in jobs as storemen in garages and got gratuities twice that of what they would have got in some of these sectors. I can't give you that answer. All I can do is try and point this out to you. Hope that we can change it and advocate for change, but realise when it comes to Paddy, the Irishman, there is no thicker, no more ignorant and no more belligerent person when he gets power. In the case of about 60% of them. It was a well-known fact after the war, that people going to England to work on the buildings and with McAlpine's Fusiliers try and get a non-Irish foreman. The Irish foreman, as they said in the song, McAlpine's Fusiliers, for you'll stand behind the mixer till your skin has turned to tan, and they'll say good on you, Paddy, with your boat fare in your hand. And there's a horse face in that song. And that's the kind of the Paddy. I tell the truth about my own race, my own people. I love the people and I love the country, but I have to tell the truth. And it may well be that in a month's time, what I'm saying here about Paddy the Irishman will be a crime. Now, having said that, I have to be proportionate about it. A lot of the ordinary people, it's only when they're in a position of authority you see this coming through. And there has to be a better way. The management position in all these places is bog standard. They get courses on management and they fill them full of nonsense, and they get this and they pick the bit they want and they disregard the bits that makes them do the right thing. Folks, hopefully that's a help. Hopefully that's a help for young people. We, my generation, have created a nightmare for children coming on to get careers and all of that. We have done it with our simple greed and our corruption, and we vote for politicians because we got a bit of land off the Land Commission 50 years ago, or they fixed a pothole, or they got the granny a medical card, or something she was entitled to anyway. That's the reality. How you fix that, I don't really know. Thumbs up or a thumbs down if you don't agree, and give me plenty of good and bad comments. I don't care what you say. Thank you very much. Bye.